Welcome to the Alternative Investor. Pharmaceutical company Cilo Cybin has its eyes on a JSE listing, which will make it the first cannabis company in South Africa to list on the local stock exchange. It is also the first South African company to gain rights to grow, further process and package marijuana products. It plans to have its cannabis oils and vapes on retailer shelves by the end of the year. I spoke to the CEO and founder Gabriel Theron about the evolution of the company.
It all started about 3 years ago when one day I was sitting on my bed and I saw an indoor grow facility. And I told my wife, that's what I want to do. And she said, well, go for it. A week later, I found myself in San Jose in America at a cannabis conference. And coming from somewhere where I did have no idea about cannabis, what's in cannabis, I found myself in a whole new world. Long story short, I met with one of my very close friends today on that side, and he introduced me to the whole biohacking world. And over time, we've basically built a business on biohacking principles, pharmaceutical principles, and also biotech principles. I came back to South Africa. I then raised the funding and I built the facility that you saw today, and went into production after we got our JSE license, which is your Good Agricultural and Collection Practices license. There's about 30 of these licenses in South Africa. And about 2 months ago, we received the GMP license, which now allows us to further process cannabis products into final product. And this makes us the first company in South Africa to have both of these licenses. And the next step for us now is, as you're aware, the IPO that's next, and then also just before the IPO, the launch of all our products.
In terms of those takeoff agreements, and I know you may not be privy to what the other companies are doing, what is the blockage there? I mean, if you look at especially what's going on in the US market, Canada, Uruguay as well, what's the dynamics in South Africa?
The biggest problem is that on the one side, you need to first comply with the regulators' rules and minimum requirements. That's, on the one side, it's already difficult, but that's the easy side of the business. And then you need to get, the next step is, you now need to comply with the country that you want to export to, their regulations. And you find that the difference between what South Africa needs and what Europe, for example, completely different. So in South Africa, you need to be on a GACP or GMP level. Our GMP is not recognized in Europe. They conform to what they call EU GMP, which is even a higher standard than GMP. And they want your cannabis flower to be on that level. So the biggest problem that you have is that you even if you get your SAPRA license, you can't export your product. That only, if you take Europe out, it leaves a handful of other countries that you can actually export to, which is Australia, South America, but you can't export flour, for example, to South America. So it's a very tedious market. You need to understand every country, their regulatory environment, and they need to comply to that. And it makes it very, very hard.
So based on what we've seen here with everything of the different stages, where does the end product go to? Are you exporting it or is it for local?
There's going to be various ranges. So we specialize in terms of what we grow in high THC. So that is for export market. We've teamed up with a couple of brands in America, Switzerland. So we'll be using those formulations, our product with their formulations, exporting into Brazil, for example, exporting into Europe, and then also Australia. That's on your THC products. On the CBD products, we're actually buying CBD in. We then formulate it with the help of Vaal University of Technology, and we will then take that to market as the non-scheduled products in South Africa. And then there will be a scheduled range as well. The regulator does allow for people to get access to non-registered medicines through what they call Section 21. It is a bit of a tedious process, but it does not mean patients can't get their hands on it. It will just take some time.
Okay, so let's talk about the rationale of an IPO, because I mean, some companies might think, listing is so tedious and all the regulations and everything that you need to adhere to. What was the discussion between you and your immediate partners, whether you want to go IPO route or private equity? What was the discussion like there?
The plan is to do a double IPO.
Okay.
So I think we're just crazy. But the plan is to first do an IPO in South Africa, and then a secondary either in Europe or NASDAQ. Sure. I'm more leaning towards NASDAQ just because it's a bigger market and the market is ready for what we're doing. I think Europe is slightly behind the Americans when it comes to cannabis and psychedelics. The reason why it's not necessarily for expansion on the cannabis side, but it's expansion into the Cilo Cybin side of the business, as well as acquiring certain assets that will play a key role going forward into what our model is, and that's about holistic health. And that's what we want to provide. So cannabis will be only one product line at the end of the day for us.
What's the mood in terms of how South Africans are viewing the cannabis industry? I mean, from the conversations you're having with perhaps your friends and your immediate circle, are people ready for what is currently happening in different parts of the world?
I saw a research publication that was done about a month ago, and in this publication they estimate the global cannabis market at about $400 billion. Out of that, the largest consumer estimated is China at about 132 billion, all illegal spend. So the reason why I'm saying that to you is, on the one side you have the supply, legal supply. On the other hand you have the buyers. And in the middle you're sitting with the regulators. And currently the regulations are keeping those two parties from touching hands. That is our biggest problem. The markets are ready. The people are ready. If you go, I was speaking to someone the other day and they said to me, if you go to Little Company of Mary, or you go to any one of these hospitals and you go to the cancer wards and you do an interview with the people there that's got cancer and ask them how many of them are using cannabis, they said to me 7 to 8 out of 10 people will say to you they're using cannabis. Now the question is, where are they getting it? Because whatever you're getting, you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know what they're using to extract. You don't know if you're doing more harm than doing good. But the perception is you can use any cannabis to heal, and that's not the case. So the biggest thing is getting the regulators to understand, to open up, and to make this more accessible to people. And if you look at what's happening globally, a lot of countries are moved over the last 10 years. So why can't we just catch up with them and be ahead of the curve than rather start at the back?
Well, that's it from us. Your the details are up next with Mpho. Goodbye.